everyone. Today we have our another new episode, and we have our world famous speakers for today's discussions. And you know that World Talent Economic Forum. We are working as a research center right now, Bangladesh, and we are uplifting millions of people from Bangladesh. Especially, we are helping with urban planning and AI research and all of the things. We have our world famous speaker, Mr. David Smith, Mr. Carlos, Mr. Jiri, Mr. Rob Enderley, Mr. Jeb, and we have our new friend, Mr. Mike. Thank you for joining today's sessions. First, I would like to give chance, Mr. David Smith, what you want to discuss or how you want to define this urban nova or urban planning.
Oh, Dr. Sharif, thank you. The projects that you're talking about, both the one here in the United States and the one you're referencing in Bangladesh, are both very exciting and are really, I think, what's going to help us shape the future. The Urbanova is a smart city initiative that's in Spokane, Washington, here in the United States, and its aim is to design cities of the future by leveraging data and technology to really pull together. And it's trying to look at ways to collaborate the businesses, the researchers, innovators to come together in some very innovative ways. This is very similar to the Technopolis concept we've discussed before, and that's used in, well, now almost 100 cities around the world as we look at it. It operates in Spokane as a living laboratory, and it's the geographical density of it's about 700 acres, and it's really includes some very interesting projects with like a smart and connected streetlight project, a shared energy model, a cleaner river program to begin to look at different areas of concerns there, such as saving energy, improving system efficiency and resiliency, and improving health, which is a very interesting one to see it. Nova is actually beginning to mature more in that they've just recently hired a new executive director, as the initial one has just retired and moving on to other different things. It's kind of interesting as you look at how they're doing their integrations. For example, on the streetlight project, they're really using that to look at how to develop a smart infrastructure, which a smart infrastructure is a very critical part of smart cities. And they're using the network streetlights to adjust brightness, to save energy and other things. But they're also built into those smart streetlights air quality sensors and other IoT type of devices and sensors to collect data and use that as part of their modeling as they're beginning to work through this experiment with them. And by the same token, in their shared energy project, they're not only looking at how to look at the energy as a grid, but they're looking at how can you distribute energy resources such as solar panels, batteries, how can other type of electric vehicles and point of use generation be integrated into grid in a smart city. So you see some of the very interesting things there. The approach that they're using is much, again, like what we see the Technopolis approach, where they are using a collaborative approach, where they're having people from universities, from the city, and from a few of the companies begin to collaborate to do it. And they want to develop solutions that can be scaled and applied to other mid-sized cities. And they're trying to use this as a proof of concept there. One of the other very interesting things about this project compared to some of the others I've looked at in the past is this project actually provides commercial services to people. So they will develop websites, they develop software, both for their own use, but they also sell that services to others. So they're doing some things to try to make the projects more self-sufficient, more sustainable from an economic standpoint. But Sharif, I think that's not a bad initial introduction.
Yeah, thank you. We have our new friends, Mr. Mike. So if you allow me, I want to give him chance. And Mr. Mike, can you introduce yourself and discuss this question? What is the concern mission of Urbanova and how does it aims to redefine urban living through smart city innovation? Can you unmute, please?
Hi, I'm Mike Achera from Galesburg, Illinois. I came here mostly as an observer today. I'm a toy designer for educational toys, and but I have a big interest in architecture and futuristic cities. So I was here mostly to observe and learn, and I'm very interested in what Dave Smith had to say. In America, I think there's a tension between scaling for sustainability and having smart grids and things like that, or scaling in terms of just more power and more energy. And I think with AI coming online, there's a huge need for big energy, and we're hoping that the dividends of that will be that small mid-sized cities will be just get a lot of free cheap or free energy because of the huge demands of these big companies that need it for AI. So thank you.
You're muted, Sharif.
Okay, thank you. In that situation, I want to give chance Mr. Rob Enderley. Mr. Rob.
Sure. Is there a specific question? Oh, there we go. Uh,
Yeah.
Urbanova, Urban Nova's core mission really is to create a sustainable, balanced, technology-driven city and urban environment, and the goal is, as I think Dave mostly pointed out, is multifaceted. Um, the one of the big initial experiments was, of course, the stoplight experiment, where they were able to determine they could save a lot of power and certainly a lot of maintenance cost by going to a more intelligent model. The goal of encompassing kind of everything into a single package is somewhat similar to the arcology concept, but much lesser than the ecology concept goes far farther, and includes building in the revenue generating parts of the construct and making it into a holistic concept. And where we see that being mostly explored at the moment, outside of some smaller experiments in China, was some of the large factory cities that they're building that are self-encompassing, where the employees never have to leave the facility, and everything they need is local, and the overall effort is designed to be both economically and increasingly humanistically focused. So that last part has been unfortunately a lagging effort in some of the bigger efforts like Flextronics, where they had a significant uptick in suicide rates. So the goal, of course, for Urbanova is to avoid that detrimental impact and improve not only the city economically, but improve the quality of life for the folks living within it. I kind of think one of the places that could probably use an Urbanova concept right now is Portland, which is kind of a mess. So in the end, it's really looking at a city holistically, all aspects, with the exception of revenue generation in one pile. The overall kind of all the things that would be underneath the control of a city planner or a mayor or other political figure. And typically those organizations don't have a lot of control over the companies and the company practices that reside within them. So that's probably what delineates the difference between arcology and the Urbanova concept, with the arcology predominantly being driven by industry, because that's the central port of revenue generation, and Urbanova being primarily focused around the duties and responsibilities of the governing body, whatever it may be. And you're still muted.
Thank you. My next question for uh, Professor Dave. Which technologies and data-driven strategies does Urbanova use to address urban challenges such as energy consumption, air quality, and public health?
Dave, we can't hear you.
You're not muted, but your microphone isn't active.
I think Mr. Dave, you can join again. Maybe microphone muted.
Yes, I can't hear you. Your mouth is moving, but no words are making it through. And unfortunately, we can't read your lips. If you go into settings at the bottom, you should be able to select your microphone and see if mine wasn't selected properly at the beginning, so I had to reselect that. Dr. Sharif, you may want to go to somebody else as Dave works through his microphone stuff. And
exactly. Carlos, what you want to discuss on this question?
For me, I would say I'm also more coming in as an observer to learn from industry experts. I would say urban planning isn't really something I am too familiar with, but kind of like what Mike said earlier, it is an interesting concept. For me, I'm coming more around the urban planning, these data-driven strategies and technologies. It's just good to learn because in the end, society can always improve, and technology has been here, has changed the game for cars with EVs, has changed the game in transportation, has changed the game in so many different things. So being able to see how it can be applied in an urban environment to our already connected world being more connected in the more local levels. So I think that's what's interesting to me. But I'm more here as an observer, just to learn from the people who do know.
Thank you. Jiri, I think that you are architect and you finish your study from USA and you are right now in Czech Republic. And what's your advice? Which technology and data-driven strategies does Urbanova use to address urban challenges such as energy consumption, air quality, and public health?
Thank you very much for your introduction, Sharif. I am very happy to be here with you, colleagues. I would like to say that we should, first of all, discuss to the people, listen to the people about their needs. Yes, this could be overcrowding, it can be inadequate infrastructure, pollution, or lack of green spaces. We should listen carefully to the people, and during our project we should create a community around our people, because the people are creating the projects. So everybody in the community is working together, cooperating, and listening to each other, and creating a better world for not only Dhaka but everywhere in the world, these spaces. So this is my idea. Thank you very much for now.
Professor David Smith, what you want to discuss on these questions? And then Mr. Rob.
Is Dave back yet with audio, or doesn't sound like it? Would you like me to go ahead and answer this one?
Great. Now Sharif has lost audio. I think, why don't you go ahead and answer this one?
I can go ahead and do that one, because if you look at Urbanova, it really, as we talked about earlier, uses an interesting range of technologies, new data models to do things in a data-driven strategy to tackle some of their urban challenges, and particularly in a mid-sized city where oftentimes the infrastructure is one that gets updated less frequently than some other places. So one of the first things we talked about before, and as Rob talked about, is the smart infrastructure built around their initial project with the network street lights. That, as we said, it changes the intensity based on the conditions, the traffic, the time of night, the environmental concerns, the weather. It also monitors the amount of traffic, monitors the air quality, the environmental conditions. And they're using this to build real-time data models that can be applied and that can begin to be duplicated in other places. And you begin to look at it. And it's really, the base goal is to optimize energy consumption. But if you begin to get those sensors and add to the sensor suite on it with different types of image recognition, others, it goes well beyond that. The second thing is they're integrating their shared energy project in here, where they're trying to integrate into a collective grid things like we talked about earlier, solar panels, batteries, all different type of electric vehicles and other elements to enhance the sustainability of the practices there. This shared energy economy is one that we're going to see more and more, I believe, as we're going to see more point of use energy generation with mini and microgrids, which this is one of the ways to take that and integrate it into a shared economy view, which I believe is part of the future as we go forward. They have an air quality monitoring technology part of this. And they're trying to identify patterns and begin to run models to see how to predict and update those. And they're also doing some projects with the medical school there and some others where they're analyzing data to address not only health issues, but also health equality challenges. They're leveraging sensor data from medical devices and environmental data from the air quality management project to try to improve health outcomes. And they're doing these, which is really trying to create a model and a data-driven model for a smarter, healthier, and more sustainable urban environment. And very interesting the way they're doing this, and because they're doing it with a relatively small group of collaborative partners. And I believe as you take and expand this, particularly in larger centers and geographical elements, you're going to see the ability to pick up a pace of change, probably even greater than what they're doing in Urbanova. So back to you, Dr. Sharif.
No, when you finish, I think Mr. Rob and Jiri can continue.
Okay.
Okay. So with regard to the technology, one of the interesting things that came out of the Urbanova exercise was a energy economy model pilot that was done with Vista. And this was about a $3.5 million effort. And it was really to try to blend all the energy generating capacity in Spokane, mostly around the university, into a manageable model. And you have quite a bit of solar generation, probably a little bit of wind working into it, and then creating an overall balance. And really what made Urbanova, I think, distinct and different from a lot of other exercises it's heavily data focused. Was heavily data focused. Many of these things have kind of wrapped up back in 2021, but at its prime, it was heavily data focused. And recognize that a lot of folks, you don't really, unless you've been in government, you don't realize that many of the decisions that the people in government make are kind of gut decisions that you're getting yelled at by a bunch of different communities that want different things, and you make a determination of by whatever method that you use, and it's really not very well defined. Often decisions are made by committee, and the committee is influenced either by constituents or as you go up, increasingly lobbyists, and certainly by folks that are contributing to their various campaign efforts. And so in a typical urban environment, most of the decisions are not made scientifically; they're made for other reasons, and as such are suboptimal. The Urbanova concept put data first. So data would be the driver of decisions. If you're going to spend money on one thing and take money from another, that's going to be data driven. You're going to have models that tell you that that's actually the best use of those resources. and move forward. It is in direct contrast to the way that the decisions are typically made, and I have doubts whether you can even make this kind of a pivot in today's world. But certainly the result of making the pivot would be a far more economically viable urban model, one that was based on the data that was coming in, putting the money where the greatest pain was, because you'd know where the greatest pain is. I mean, the idea of the squeaky wheel gets the oil really is how decisions are made in government. Is the loudest voice, the most painful person is the one that drives the overall. In fact, when I was in business, it's not too different. We used to call it the biggest asshole in the room theory. So with Urbanova, you get a focus on data, a focus on basing decisions on some analysis of data, and increasingly for a lot of projects like the energy project or the stoplight project, on sensors that have been put in place that tell you exactly where the resources need to be spent, and then how to optimize those resources once they've been deployed. And so it's the way companies probably should be run, but aren't, which is one of the often aren't, which is kind of sad as I think about it. And as we often talk about AI on this program, the Urbanova concept dovetails nicely with AI, because the AI cannot make good decisions without data. And if you create a proper data models up front and ensure their accuracy, then your implementation of AI, which can have immediate impacts on things like energy balancing, and even the stoplight model that what I mentioned earlier, that will be far more effective and far less likely to hallucinate or create bad decisions. So so overall, the big difference is it's data driven.
Yes,
Thank
I believe
you.
it's my turn now.
Yeah.
And I would like to use my space to ask a question for Dr. Sharif. This is my question for you, Mr. Sharif.
Okay.
How these practices, which we are talking about now, can be adapted to the local context of Bangladesh, your country?
Okay. When we design any city or we design any master plan, we go for design study or feasibility study. So what we are planning, let's say Mr. David Smith, Mr. Rob, or Dave, or you, or everyone, those who have the expertise for any specific technologies. So based on your availability and your knowledge, we go for the feasibility study. So when we design the feasibility study and we go for this conference, that we create the awareness in the local communities, the grassroots level communities, the politicians, the corporation, the NGO, everybody involved in this ecosystem. Then we move with this real project deployment. That is the way we develop. Yeah. Mr. Dev, you want to add any point? Can you unmute, please?
Dave, this time you are muted.
Carlos, you want to add any point?
Oh, I'm good for now. Thank you, though.
Okay, okay. I want to go for the next questions. For Mr. David, how does Urbanova engage with the local communities, business, and government stakeholder to ensure inclusive and sustainable development?
And can you go back to, I was texting Dave, he probably should try rebooting his computer and logging back in. So is to answer your question is to get there is that, um, as Rob was talking about, we were talking about earlier, is you have to put in place collaborative partnerships and inclusive strategies with this. One of the things that I found very interesting, like I mentioned before, with the one in Spokane, is they actually did parts of this initiative in a service model where they actually went and did work for others. They developed applications. And some of their applications were very interesting to me because as you looked at how they were doing them, uh, they were looking at things like they introduced an electric vehicle car sharing program where they were doing it beginning that way. They also developed applications, like I said, of trying to um, bring this project to others in ways that are very different. So they developed a mobile app to try to uh, understand what Spokane can do with extreme weather events. They did another mobile app as part of this activity where they were promoting risk reduction among adults with asthma during the wildfire events that were there, and a way to look at quality of life there. Um, they developed software that they uh, put out particularly to people with special needs and health issues called Consistent Care, which was trying to connect people to get support with their own medical challenges, and quite a few other interesting ones with that. They had a budgeting tool they could do. They actually created a digital exchange. There was a data sharing platform uh, that was trying to share information between one of their partners, which is Alvista, and others connected to it. So really some very interesting approaches of how they were trying to um, use these products in a way to meet their needs, but also develop their own resources to be able to do it. And as was said earlier, one of the things they tried to do was emphasize community involvement. They hosted workshops, they did forums, they did other events to gather input. A lot of the little applications they were developing were to do that. And the goal again was to try to integrate these all into a new approach to urban planning, um, and try to work with government bodies to secure funding for their projects. So their approach was not only using technology, but it was leveraging the human capital and the government and others to be socially responsible and sustainable. Um, and it was a pretty worthwhile experiment, I think. I think you're going to see more with it going, but it's going to take, I think, them a while to finalize there. And like Rob said, when I start looking at what they have on their website, it looks like they've slowed down some in this project, but it's a good approach to look at how to use data in a real-time environment.
Why don't you go ahead and go next? Go ahead, Jerry.
Yes, can I say something? I would like to lighten up a little bit and thank my good friend Laura Deming for a great project we did together. And it was a parking day. And this means two things. You can park your car, or you can roll out a carpet from which is green, and stop the people from stop the cars from parking. And this is what we did. We did when I was young. We did this project like parking in the middle of the city, like making spaces green and roofs of the buildings green and parking spaces green. And it was a great fun. And I think that even the small things, if you do like individually, if you do small step, it can have a great impact. Over back to Sharif, maybe, or to Rob or David.
Yeah, so Urbanova had a couple of unique aspects to it when it comes to engaging with all the various stakeholders, and one of them was that it was basically they used a foundational multi-stakeholder partnership model, where you had government, business, academia, and community development organizations all engaged together to create a solution. And wrapping around this was the living laboratory approach, which was specified by Spokane's University, and really looked at this as a way not to ultimately solve a problem, but to create a mechanism to better understand the problem prior to implementation. It's not necessarily the best way to implement something, but it's one of the best ways to learn about how you should implement something. So it was experimental in nature. The research was largely people-oriented, or people-centered. There were folks that were directly missioned to engage with the community and those different stakeholders to make sure that they were involved. And there was a massive effort for shared data platforms, mostly managed by Vista Digital Exchange, but there were other parties involved as well. And this was designed to create holistic insights and far better decisions throughout the process. There was project-specific engagement as well, as you would expect from a project like this. I mentioned the shared energy economy model pilot that was created during that time. But again, it was designed to kind of create concepts that could then be used by others to expand and carry the overall effort forward. It was as much an experiment as anything else, but as a result, it delivered good data and what worked and what didn't work. And that was because it had a major focus on repeatability and scalability, allowing it to, each of the things that was recommended was not supposed to be just for Spokane, but to be applicable to any urban environment that might want to use it and at any size. And so they really thought through the different aspects of this. They engaged the different stakeholders aggressively and made sure that they had a combined data model so that the decisions that were reached or the recommendations that were made as a result of that data model included all of those stakeholders. And so that's how they kind of involved the community. They made each of the communities a major stakeholder in the overall effort, remained engaged with them, captured the data, allowed the data to roll up, and made sure the data was shared. So no one pillar was isolated, and then allowed that data to roll up. And then they made the decisions that were made, or at least in theory made, were data oriented. But overall, this was as much or more an experiment than it was an actual implementation. And Dr. Sharif, back to you. And you're muted.
Yeah, thank you. As we are working with these grassroots level communities, my question is that how does Urbanova engage with the local communities, business, and the government stakeholder to ensure inclusive and sustainable development? Mr. David Smith.
Well, you begin to look at this of having to meet the needs, or you've heard me use the word careabouts with many people before. That's one of the key things you begin to look at that.
Because next week,
Sharif, you're not muted now, and you're talking over everybody else. Plus, this is the same question I think we just answered.
Yeah, I think we answered a lot of this particular one, Sharif.
Why don't we move to the next question?
Let's see, which one is that? That's the one of measurable
impacts. I think is the one that's different. Yeah.
Yeah, which we've answered that one as well too. Why don't we go to the one about can the model be replicated?
Oh yeah, there you go.
And the answer is yes, it can be. It needs to be adapted as you look at the local careabouts of the communities. And Uranova's success from its partnerships it's had with the community organizations, the local government, and the university there. And as we've seen with approaches like Uranova and the Technopolis and others, that's something that can be duplicated, but it has to be respective of the unique individual careabouts of the region, the culture, the type of companies you have within the region, and what the economic and societal focuses are in the region you're trying to do this in. One of the things that was a little bit more unique in Uranova's is they used the Spokane University District as their testing ground. And they had this 700 acres where they were focusing the work, where many of these try to do it, for example, in a citywide basis or region-wide basis. And I think they were smart to limit where they were doing so they can collect more data and be able to model and use AI more effectively to do it. And the living lab was a way where they could refine this smart city technology before they try to begin to scale them citywide. Um, and they chose things that had some impact, like their smart street lights and how the energy models could be there, which I think was a great idea on their standpoint. But as you try to scale this to other cities and other countries, to be able to tackle problems that have tangible outcomes and have data that is more deterministic, or things which can be really brought to mind well on this. Um, their data decision model making was a good one. That models can be shared across them, but they addressed the challenges and they integrated pretty well things like Internet of Things devices and other type of uh, data modeling and data platforms. And again, they worked closely with the community and the government. So they involved the local residents in it. And they, other places can do this by hosting workshops, surveys, forums. In fact, one of the services that Unova offered to others was actually a survey function to to for others to develop surveys because they had developed that expertise. And they worked with the government to try to make sure the government stakeholders were aligned with its projects, with where the government was going. Again, this is something that can be adopted well by others who are trying to do this, because that collaborative nature is one that's very important. The other thing that they really didn't talk about on their websites or in any of the reports I saw, but it's clear from some reading between the lines of some of what they've done. They did a fairly interesting project of trying to educate the citizens, to educate the businesses. And we've talked about lifelong learning on your program many times, but this is a place where even a smart city, a smart community effort, and this is more of a smart community inside a part of Spokane, can come together to educate, to make tangible contributions to the future of the stakeholders.
Mr. Rob, you want to add any point for these questions?
Well, yeah, sure. So I think the big point in terms of being able to deal with data privacy and ethics is they use the Avista Digital Exchange as their predominant consultant for the data rollout. And often, assuming you use the right partner, right company partner, companies, particularly larger companies, are much better at managing these underlying concepts because they've had to deal with regulatory bodies that force them to do it, and typically the regulations exist on a state or federal level, not on a city level, and so a city is unable to understand the underlying problems associated with data privacy and ethics, and often if a city drives an effort like this, their lack of understanding is going to result in a data breach. Or other related problems because they just simply don't have the experience. And often, even in companies, the people that don't do this kind of thing regularly take security as a nice to have, not a must have, until something blows up, in which case the people that made those decisions are generally shot out of a cannon and have their careers destroyed. And so you want to avoid those kind of outcomes. And so in the case of ethics and data privacy, you need to bring on board a firm that you trust that has that kind of competence in that area, or it could be a federal or a federal body that might also do this. But at least here in the United States, the federal bodies just haven't maintained a high enough level of competence over time, and so I'm much more comfortable assuming the company is trusted, because you certainly have bad actors in companies as well. But assuming the company is trusted and has skin in the game, they'll be much more able to create a secure environment and an ethical foundation, which is also important as I mentioned before, as we roll up these kinds of programs into artificial intelligence. Having an ethical foundation is incredibly important, because if you don't, any lack of ethics or included bias is going to be multiplied by the AI deployment, and the end result will be a failure, at least against the goal of being ethically sound and non-biased. And so in the end, their approach that they took, I think, was I don't know much about Vista Digital Exchange, but assuming they selected them properly, then using that kind of a resource really is at the foundation of their ability to meet those, certainly the privacy goals and probably the ethical goals. On the ethics side, ethics is something that is unique to every body. The definition, the focus, everything is unique to the body. In this case, the city of Spokane should have been the body that had that ethical center, and it would, of course, depend on whether the Vista Digital Exchange's ethics dovetailed with that, and may or may not. But that would be critical to the selection, because you want to make sure the entity that you're using for this matches matches or exceeds the ethical foundation of the entity that's contracting it out.
Thank you, Mr. Didi. You want to add any point on
Yes,
data
I would like
privacy?
to say, I would like to thank you very much. I am leaving now, but before I go, I would like to say it was very good. I was very glad to be here with you, and I would like to wish you, Sarif, this success in your endeavor about visionary urban planning, smart city context, sustainability and green spaces, community engagement, and global trends in Urbanova in Bangladesh. And I am count with me if you need anything from my side. I will always try to help you. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. Thank you. Mr. David Smith, my next question for you, how has the Urbanova leveraged public-private partnership? I think your organization also expert for these public-private partnerships to drive innovation, and what lesson can other cities learn from this model?
Well, public-private partnerships, P3s, are a very interesting way to pull the resources together, because uh, oftentimes initiatives do not have the business process put together with them in a way that makes sense. And with public-private partnerships, you tend to do more upfront planning, and you put together, in essence, business plans and projects, and you put KPIs and metrics in place to go and be able to show results, which sometimes just a pure collaboration, they uh, do not give you that much on how to do it. Um, and I think that's a very beneficial approach here. But the public-private partnership can each have roles. For example, if I look here where I live, one of the biggest public-private partnerships is building toll roads across the state of Texas, where money comes from one set, where another set provides the design and engineering, another set provides the research, and pulling those together to serve the public good in this instance. And while I hate driving on toll roads, but it does improve the infrastructure which we have. And what we're doing very interesting here is we're taking one of the larger toll roads, which goes between uh, Waco, Austin, and San Antonio, uh, and we're turning it into also a digital highway with different types of events, digital technologies, different type of test beds, looking particularly at advanced sensor integration. Uh, One of the experiments in the public-private partnership on that one is, can you use that type of a physical infrastructure and digital infrastructure to drive economic growth in areas where there was no economic growth before? And that to me is if you look at some of the type of things like Urbanova was going to do, they were in a constrained area that was well, it was pretty fully populated. But this public-private partnership is trying to say, uh, kind of like the movie about the Field of Dreams: if you build it, will they come? And that's part of what this public-private partnership is doing, is saying, can we use the digital infrastructure? Can we use the sensors? Can we use the data modeling? Can we build small data centers as a public-private partnership to drive economic growth, to drive innovation? And I believe you're going to see that being done quite a bit more globally as we see those that type of digital infrastructure combined with physical infrastructure being a key catalyst to drive the future growth of areas.
Thank you. Mr. Rob, what role does citizen engagement and data privacy play in Urbanova Smart City strategy, and how is community trust maintained when using personal and environmental data? If you want to share some of your view for developing the strategy for this smart city.
Well, as I mentioned before, the model they used was a multi-stakeholder partnership model, and it was tied in with community development organizations who then performed the role of engaging with the community and making sure the community was heard. And the reason for selecting community development organizations is they tend to be more trusted by the community, where if you were to use law enforcement or something out of the mayor's office or whatever, there'd be a certain amount of distrust between the community and the effort that was being undertaken. So you pick a group the community already trusts, and you use them for your community engagement, and you're much more likely to get honest answers from the community, and much less likely to have resistance. On the other hand, it really depends on how widely spread those community development organizations are. Often they are not holistic in their approach. They go after certain communities or certain groups, and may not provide entire coverage. And so you would have to do some type of gap analysis to make sure that the community development organizations that we're using encompass the community that you were impacting. And if not, then you'd have to have some type of a supplemental force to go in and fill that particular gap. Otherwise, you're going to have disenfranchised people that might be upset about what you're doing, or be upset that they weren't engaged, and that aggravation will result in a certain amount of friction in terms of deployment. But that's basically how they did it. Is they used that multifaceted, multi-stakeholder partnership model, and then for the community engagement, used community development organizations as the interface to the community.
Thank you, Mr. David Smith. My next question for you: in what ways has Urbanova's work in area like air quality, smart street light, energy optimization impacted policy decisions or urban planning in this area or beyond?
Their
Can you
first
unmute
project
you?
is a great example of that. As you look at it, it was the Smart Streetlight project, and it did result in energy savings, and it demonstrated how once you put sensors and into place, and enable the streetlights to be controlled, not just an on off, but even the intensity, the power level, and things. It improved energy efficiency, and as a result of this and some of the integration of the sensor, it improved public safety. Is one of the comments in their evaluation of that. And as I said, they collect data on air quality, they do noise levels, they have motion detectors in these. And so it informed the policies on energy conservation and public safety. And they also use this as a way to look at micro scale local air quality, where many places you look at air quality across the overall city region, they were able to do this in much smaller views where they could get insights into pollution patterns. They were able to track things like when the forest fires were around there, they saw the impact of that and how it moved and how it went through different areas. So they use this to shape environmental policies, to shape their health strategies in the area, and they use the data generated from this the air quality and the smart street lights, to go and secure grants from the state, from the federal government, and from foundations to be able to apply to advance the model even further. And they did this in a way where they tried to use uh, renewable energy sources and distributed energy resources to create their own mini microgrids there. And so this is where they've taken that data and it's being used by the government there uh, to influence discussions on energy policy and how to work with it. So the biggest thing from there, which Rob talked about earlier and I talked about earlier, is it's a great example of how data-driven strategies can guide policy decisions to create smarter cities. And this is a way to help give the true data for transformation. Because too often people try transformation as a action without the data to understand it and the data to measure it. And the data-driven approach is a critical one for success today.
Thank you. Mr. Robin Lee, do you have any view for this question?
I think we pretty much covered it.
Okay, so what's your closing remarks for today's session?
Urbanova showcased a scientific approach to solving a big problem. How do you manage a city effectively? How do you include all the stakeholders in the decisions that are made and create a more holistic, efficient whole? And by using a data-driven, somewhat technology-oriented approach, Urbanova showcased that with the right data and with the right form of engagement, you could create a management structure that was much less biased, much more efficient, and potentially resulted in a much happier population, a much more content population. In many cases, I typically would not look at the U.S. to drive this kind of an initiative. I'd more likely look at someplace like Finland or any of the Scandinavian countries that tend to do this kind of thing so much better. But in the end, regardless of the experiment you look at, we can make cities better. We can make them less biased, and we can make them more ethically sound. It just requires that we focus on it and use the technologies and people we have available to optimize that outcome.
Thank you, Mr. David Smith. What's your closing remarks for today's session?
Well, I echo most of what Rob has said, and let me just expand it in a different way, because their view was how to create a more sustainable, healthier city, which is a great way with their collaborative approaches, their use of sensors, and their data-driven strategy. And particularly for a mid-sized city, it was great. But where I see this type of collaborative work, this type of pulling together the different types of stakeholders in the city and working on that, it also tends to go beyond what Urbanova was trying to do in this. It tends to also include how do I develop a workforce that can work within this smart environment? How do I develop training and education resources, particularly if I'm bringing in new industries or if industries I have within my area are in transition, and do that. It also, in many instances, say, how can I improve the funding for innovation? One of the things that I noticed was missing when I went through Urbanova's mission statements and everything was the role of innovation, the role of creating new companies, of new industries, and of putting a future vision into place of the future of the community. And if I were looking to implement this in other places outside of Spokane, that's one of the things I would tend to do, is put some of the elements in there. You know, when we did the Austin Technopolis approach here, those were some things we saw we had to be it a more educated workforce. We saw we had to diversify. We did here, and we've done this in other cities. We looked and said, what's missing in the community? What skills are missing? For example, I can pick on Austin. When I was one of the founders of the Austin Software Council and the Austin Technology Council, and we looked and we saw, for example, we didn't have marketing expertise for software. We didn't know how to sell software, how to market it. We saw that we were short on venture capital funding, on innovation funding. And so efforts were put in place to improve all of those. We didn't have enough technicians, particularly as we got into semiconductors and others like that. So we put in place extensive training programs as part of our smart city approaching. And if it were me, I would do that in other communities as well. I think Urbanova is a great approach. It exemplifies how important being data driven is, which being data driven, I believe, is important for really most regions, most companies, and particularly for most governments. So, Dr. Sharif, thank you for letting me be part of today's program.
Thank you. This is excellent discussions, and we request all of our audience please share our content as much as possible. What we are trying to do, we are trying to enhancing the capacity with the knowledge of our speakers, so their experience is priceless and how they are contributing for World Talent Economic Forum. This is very valuable. Some of the politicians has a plan to join in World Talent Economic Forum. I'm sorry that I have to focus to solve their technical problem, but somehow we cannot. But next episode, a few politicians will join, that they will adapt our innovations for their city developments. So how Mr. Rob, Mr. David Smith, and all of our speakers actually contributing as an speakers for World Talent Economic Forum. This is helping for community developments, for capacity developments, and especially for uplifting community. That is the way the global north and global south can work, and we can enhance capacity and we can improve human lives. That's all for today's session. Thank you, Mr. Rob, and thank you, Mr. David, for your excellent contribution for World Talent Economic Forum. Thank you. Bye bye and take care.